I used to feel like our life was enough. Our small home held warmth in quiet ways that felt steady and safe. Nothing felt missing, just simple and settled. Then I began noticing how other families lived. Bigger homes, more space, more visible comfort. Their lives seemed to stretch wider than mine. Something shifted quietly inside me. My life didn't change, but the way I saw it did. I began measuring without realizing it. Suddenly, what we had felt smaller than before. Nothing had actually changed around me, but it no longer felt the same inside. That was when I noticed something uncomfortable. The feeling of lack didn't come from need. It came from comparison I allowed to grow. Morning feels steady, almost automatic, as I prepare breakfast the way I always do. I notice how everything fits into place without much thought. There's a quiet comfort in knowing what comes next. I listen as Mira talks, her excitement filling the room in a way I didn't expect. Her words paint a world that feels just slightly out of reach. I smile, but something inside me pauses. Once the house quiets, I return to the usual tasks that fill my day. Each movement feels familiar, almost grounding. For a moment, everything feels enough again. I sit down to rest and scroll without thinking too much. Images pass by quickly, but some stay longer than others. I don't realize yet that they're starting to linger. I start noticing details I didn't pay attention to before. Other children seem to have more opportunities, more activities. A quiet question begins to form in my mind. I remember how simple things used to feel enough for Mira. She never asked for more than what she had. But now I'm the one asking, quietly. That night, I see the living room differently than before. Nothing has changed, but it doesn't feel the same. My attention shifts to what's missing. I realize the space hasn't changed at all. It's my way of seeing that has quietly shifted. And with that, the feeling changes too. A few days later, I found myself scrolling through home ideas. I told myself it was just for inspiration, nothing serious. But I kept saving things I didn't plan to buy before. Then I came across courses for children. English, music, coding, each one seemed useful in its own way. It quietly made me wonder if Mira was missing out. I started thinking Mira should have more activities. Not because she asked, but because others seemed to have them. It felt like something I needed to fix. I brought up the idea of a small renovation to Armand. I said it was about comfort, keeping things practical. But deep down, I wanted things to look better. Armand listened without reacting much. He suggested we think about it slowly. But I could feel a quiet impatience building inside me. It felt like everyone else was already ahead, as if they had moved forward without us noticing, and we were still standing in the same place. The bills didn't change. Our budget stayed the same as before. But somehow, my wants kept growing quietly. None of it came from what we truly needed. It came from what I kept seeing again and again, and it felt stronger than I expected. I started with small things that felt harmless. A cushion, a lamp, an extra shelf to fill empty corners. It all seemed like simple comfort. Then I added one more activity to Mira's week. Her schedule was already full, but I convinced myself it would help her later. It felt like a responsible choice. I began browsing vacation options late at night. Affordable packages, limited offers, small windows of opportunity. It felt like something we deserved too. The spending grew quietly, almost unnoticed. Small amounts, spread across days, blending into routine. I kept telling myself it was manageable. Armin mentioned the budget felt tighter this month. I answered calmly, calling it an investment for us. The words sounded steady enough to believe. But underneath, I could sense a different reason. Many of these choices didn't come from real need. They came from something harder to admit. The more I looked at other lives, the more mine felt incomplete. Nothing had changed, but the feeling had. It stayed longer than I expected. I didn't realize how costly comparison could be. It quietly replaced contentment with something else. And without noticing, everything started to follow. That afternoon, Mira sat quietly on the living room floor with her crayons. I noticed her from the kitchen, but didn't interrupt. Something about her focus made me pause. I asked her what she was drawing, keeping my voice light. She answered without hesitation. "It's our house," she said, smiling. I looked at the drawing more carefully. The house was small and simple, Nothing like what I had been imagining lately, but it was full of color. Then she said something simple. "I like our house, Mom." I didn't respond right away. The words stayed with me longer than I expected. These past days, I had been noticing what our house lacked. She had only seen what it gave her. I began to understand something I had overlooked. Her sense of enough wasn't shaped by size or things. It came from feeling safe inside. I asked myself a quiet question. When did I stop feeling that way? When did other people's lives become my measure? That night, I sat a little longer than usual. I didn't try to fix anything. I just admitted that comparison had quietly shaped my choices. I wrote a single sentence in my small notebook. It felt simple, but it stayed with me longer than I expected. Not everything I want is born from what I truly need. I gave that thought a name so I could return to it. A filter before turning desire into spending. I realized I needed that pause more than I thought. I started asking myself a quieter question each time. Do I actually need this right now? Or did I just see someone else have it first? The question didn't feel heavy, but the answers were clearer than I expected. Many of them quietly leaned toward no. I began to notice how comparison works. It doesn't arrive as pressure. It often comes disguised as inspiration. But not every life fits into ours. Different situations carry different priorities. What works for them doesn't always belong here. Chasing someone else's life with my own money felt off. There was no clear finish line waiting, just another version of more ahead. That was when it settled in quietly. Enough is something that needs protection. Without it, no amount ever really feels sufficient. The next morning, I opened the shopping list I made last week. I paused longer than usual before reading each item. Some of them no longer felt necessary. I decided to delay buying a new sofa. The old one still held our evenings together. Mira still curled up there without asking for anything else. I talked with Armand about Mira's activities. We chose just one class she truly enjoyed. Felt lighter to focus on what mattered to her. I slowly reduced the time I spent on social media, not out of discomfort, but to keep my thoughts steady. The silence felt clearer than the noise. When a new desire appeared, I gave it space before responding. I asked myself a simple question. Is this a need or just comparison? I noticed many wants faded after a few hours. They were never really strong to begin with, just brief impulses passing through. I began to look at my home again, this time without measuring it against anything else. It felt quieter in a reassuring way. The warmth returned in a quiet way. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt enough again. Like before I started looking outward. This month feels different in a quiet way. I notice the numbers settle without tension. It isn't more income, just fewer impulses. I no longer feel rushed by things I thought I needed. The urgency has quietly faded. My breathing follows a slower rhythm now. Mira still enjoys her drawing class just as much. She doesn't ask for more. Watching her reminds me that simple is enough. Armand mentions the house feels calmer these days. Our conversations have changed without effort. We talk about what we have, not what is missing. Gratitude appears in small, ordinary moments now. It doesn't need words. It grows quietly through how I see things. I begin to understand that enough is not about numbers. It comes from how I frame what I have. That shift changes everything quietly. I still have dreams for our family, but they no longer feel heavy. They sit gently, like something I can grow into. Now I move forward at my own pace, not out of fear of falling behind, but because it feels right for us. Sometimes the feeling of not having enough doesn't begin inside our life. It quietly grows from what we see every day without us noticing. And in many ways, that is simply part of being human. Comparing is easy to slip into, almost automatic, but the cost often arrives quietly, not only in money, but in how we feel inside our own home. Peace can slowly become something we trade away. Not everything that looks right for others will feel right for us. Life has its own rhythm that doesn't need to match anyone else's pace. And there's nothing wrong with moving differently. Healthy money tends to grow from decisions that feel honest and steady, not from pressure that comes from outside voices. That difference may look small, but it changes everything over time. Now I hold on to one quiet belief. Feeling that life is enough can protect more than we often realize. And it is something I choose to take care of, little by little.